You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. In cloud environments, compute workloads form the engines that drive applications and services, making their security and consistency a top priority. The purpose of standardized baselines, timely patching, and golden images is to ensure that every instance, no matter when or where it is deployed, begins from a known secure state. Without these practices, environments quickly devolve into fragmented systems with inconsistent configurations and unknown vulnerabilities. Baselines provide the foundation by defining what secure looks like, patches maintain that state against evolving threats, and golden images deliver repeatability at scale. Together, these measures transform compute from a chaotic set of ad hoc servers into a disciplined, auditable, and resilient platform. For learners, mastering this topic means understanding how these elements interact, why they matter in preventing compromise, and how they reduce both technical and operational risk across dynamic cloud ecosystems. A baseline is essentially a documented set of configuration settings that describes the required security state of a system. It acts as a reference point against which systems can be built, evaluated, and maintained. Baselines can include policies such as password complexity, firewall rules, logging configurations, or encryption requirements. By defining these expectations in advance, organizations eliminate ambiguity and ensure uniformity across their compute fleet. In practice, this prevents the situation where one server is hardened while another is left with default, insecure settings. Baselines also allow automated tools to check compliance, detecting drift, and providing evidence for audits. Without a baseline, it is impossible to say whether a system is secure, because there is no agreed definition of what secure means. Establishing and maintaining baselines therefore forms the bedrock of any robust compute security program, guiding both deployment and ongoing monitoring. Minimal operating system builds represent a practical way to enforce the principle of least privilege at the system level. By stripping away unnecessary packages, services, and tools, administrators reduce the attack surface available to adversaries. Every unused service is a potential vulnerability waiting to be exploited, so removing them proactively strengthens defenses. For example, a web server instance does not need mail services or graphical user interfaces. Their presence only creates complexity and risk. Minimal builds also improve performance and simplify patching, as fewer components require updates. Container images adopt this philosophy as well, often relying on lightweight distributions tailored to a single purpose. While minimal builds require careful testing to ensure that essential functionality remains intact, their security benefits are significant. They demonstrate the broader truth that complexity breeds vulnerability, and that streamlined systems are not only easier to secure but also easier to operate. External guidance documents like the Center for Internet Security Benchmarks and the Security Technical Implementation Guides provide prescriptive references for hardening workloads. These frameworks distill collective expertise into actionable steps, offering detailed instructions on how to configure operating systems, middleware, and applications securely. For example, they may specify which ports should be disabled, how to configure logging, or how to enforce encryption settings. Aligning with such benchmarks ensures that organizations are not reinventing the wheel, but are following industry-recognized practices. Compliance with these standards also demonstrates diligence to auditors and regulators, providing evidence that workloads are hardened according to objective criteria. While not every recommendation may apply in every context, the process of evaluating and tailoring benchmarks strengthens the discipline of baseline management. Ultimately, these references transform abstract security principles into practical, testable configurations that can be consistently applied across diverse environments. A golden image represents the practical embodiment of a baseline, a pre-hardened, versioned machine image used to deploy systems in a consistent and compliant state. Rather than configuring each instance manually, organizations rely on golden images as standardized templates. These images contain hardened operating systems, applied patches, and approved configurations, ensuring that every workload begins from the same secure foundation. Versioning provides traceability, allowing administrators to know exactly which image was used to build a given system. Signing images adds another layer of assurance, preventing tampered or unauthorized images from entering the environment. Golden images reduce variance, streamline deployment, and accelerate recovery by providing a known good state to revert to when necessary. They embody the principle of security by design, embedding protections at the earliest stage of workload creation rather than attempting to bolt them on afterward. Image pipelines automate the process of building, validating, signing, and releasing golden images, ensuring reproducibility and governance at scale. Rather than crafting images manually, which is error-prone and inconsistent, organizations treat image creation as a controlled workflow. Source code repositories define configurations, build servers assemble images, validation steps confirm alignment with baselines, and signing verifies authenticity. Release stages then make approved images available for deployment. Automation reduces human error, enforces consistency, and allows rapid response when new patches or configuration updates are required. For example, a critical vulnerability discovered in a web server package can trigger an automated pipeline to rebuild and redistribute updated images within hours. Image pipelines bring the principles of modern software engineering version control, automation, and validation into infrastructure management, transforming what was once an artisanal process into a disciplined, industrialized practice. Provenance tracking provides assurance that images are built from trusted sources and have not been tampered with along the way. It records details such as which repositories supplied packages, what build steps were taken, and which signatures validate the results. This transparency is vital in defending against supply chain attacks, where adversaries may insert malicious code into upstream dependencies. For example, if a vulnerability is later discovered in a library, provenance records allow administrators to trace which images and instances are affected. By maintaining this chain of custody, organizations can not only prove compliance but also respond rapidly to emerging risks. Provenance tracking reflects the principle that trust in an image does not come from its existence alone, but from the documented and verifiable process by which it was created. In cloud environments where scale magnifies risk, this practice is indispensable for maintaining integrity. Package management policies define how software is sourced, updated, and controlled within compute workloads. By restricting installations to trusted repositories, organizations prevent unauthorized or malicious software from entering their systems. Pinning versions ensures consistency, avoiding unexpected changes when upstream packages update. Restrictions on unapproved software maintain governance by ensuring that only vetted tools are deployed. For example, a policy might forbid direct installation from the Internet, requiring all packages to come from an internal repository that mirrors and validates upstream sources. These controls not only improve security but also support compliance, as they provide a clear audit trail of what was installed and when. Without such policies, workloads risk becoming patchwork environments filled with unverified components, increasing both operational fragility and attack surfaces. Effective package management transforms software acquisition from a casual activity into a disciplined, controlled process. Patch classification is an essential element of workload governance because not all updates carry the same weight. Security updates often require immediate attention as they close vulnerabilities that attackers might exploit. Bug fixes improve stability but may not be urgent, while feature updates introduce new capabilities but can also add risk if applied indiscriminately. By classifying patches into these categories, organizations can prioritize effectively, addressing the most critical risks first while balancing operational impact. Documentation of patch classification supports transparency, showing why certain updates were applied immediately and others deferred. For example, a critical kernel vulnerability would be patched urgently, while a minor feature addition could wait for the next scheduled maintenance. This structured approach avoids both extremes of reckless updates and dangerous neglect, ensuring that workloads remain both secure and reliable. Maintenance windows and change approvals ensure that patch deployment aligns with service availability goals. Even well-tested patches can cause unexpected issues, so coordinating updates during designated windows reduces business disruption. Change approvals provide an additional safeguard by requiring peer review or management authorization before updates proceed. This governance process balances agility with accountability. For example, a patch might be scheduled during off-peak hours, with a rollback plan ready in case of failure. Coordinated maintenance also fosters communication across teams, ensuring that stakeholders are aware of potential impacts. In high-availability environments, rolling updates or blue-green deployments may be used to apply patches without downtime. By embedding patching into operational rhythms, organizations ensure that security improvements do not come at the cost of service reliability. Endpoint detection and response baselines define the minimum telemetry and policies required to monitor compute workloads effectively. These baselines specify what data must be collected, such as process activity, network connections, and behavioral anomalies, as well as how exceptions should be handled. By standardizing EDR deployment, organizations ensure that every workload produces consistent visibility for security teams. This uniformity is essential for correlating events across large environments. For example, if one instance reports suspicious outbound traffic, but others lack comparable logging, investigators may be left with incomplete insights. Baselines eliminate such blind spots, enabling comprehensive detection and response. They also provide a reference for tuning policies, balancing sensitivity against operational noise. In the absence of EDR baselines, security becomes fragmented and unreliable, undermining the ability to detect and contain threats effectively. Logging and audit policies extend visibility by ensuring that authentication attempts, configuration changes, and process activities are captured and retained. These logs allow administrators to reconstruct events, investigate incidents, and demonstrate compliance with regulatory obligations. For example, an audit trail showing who accessed a system and when provides accountability and deters misuse. Logging policies must define not only what is collected but also how long it is retained and how access is controlled. Secure storage of logs prevents tampering, while centralized aggregation simplifies analysis. Without consistent policies, logs may be incomplete, inconsistent, or inaccessible when needed most. By establishing logging and audit standards as part of baselines, organizations ensure that every workload contributes to a coherent and defensible record of activity, supporting both operational needs and legal obligations. Instance initialization scripts bring flexibility to deployments by performing configuration at boot. These scripts allow workloads to be customized without embedding secrets or sensitive data directly into images. Idempotency is a key principle, ensuring that scripts can be run multiple times without causing errors or inconsistencies. For example, an initialization script might configure logging agents, install monitoring tools, or apply environment-specific settings. By separating image creation from runtime configuration, organizations achieve both consistency and adaptability. However, security must be carefully managed, as poorly controlled scripts can introduce vulnerabilities or expose credentials. Best practice dictates that scripts retrieve configuration securely, avoid storing secrets, and log their actions for audit. Initialization scripts illustrate how automation can extend governance into the runtime phase, ensuring that workloads remain aligned to baselines even after deployment. Secret retrieval at runtime addresses the long-standing challenge of credential management by replacing static secrets with dynamic, short-lived tokens. Instead of baking passwords or keys into images, workloads request credentials from centralized secret management systems when they start. These tokens are typically time-limited and tied to the workload's identity, reducing the impact if compromised. For example, a web server might fetch a database credential valid only for a few hours, renewing it automatically as needed. This model provides both security and flexibility, preventing the exposure of long-lived secrets in configuration files or source code. Auditing secret retrievals adds accountability, showing who accessed what and when. Runtime secret retrieval exemplifies the shift from static to dynamic security practices, aligning with zero-trust principles and significantly reducing the attack surface within compute workloads. Remote access controls ensure that administrative connections such as secure shell or remote desktop protocol are tightly restricted. Rather than allowing open access from the Internet, organizations funnel connections through authorized paths, often using bastion hosts or VPN gateways. Multi-factor authentication further strengthens protection by requiring more than a password. Access should also be logged and monitored, with session recording for high-privilege activities. For example, engineers troubleshooting an instance would authenticate through a bastion host, use time-limited credentials, and have their session recorded for review. By contrast, unrestricted SSH access exposes workloads to brute force attacks and credential theft. Remote access controls reduce these risks while still enabling legitimate administration. They represent the practical application of least privilege to connectivity, ensuring that powerful pathways into workloads are constrained by both technology and oversight. Disk encryption and virtual, trusted platform module features provide strong safeguards for data at rest and boot integrity. Encrypting virtual disks ensures that if storage media is copied or stolen, the data remains inaccessible without keys. Snapshots and backups must also be encrypted, as they often contain sensitive information. Virtual TPMs extend trust into the guest operating system, storing keys securely and enabling features like full disk encryption tied to platform attestation. For example, a Linux instance using a VTPM can verify its boot state before releasing disk encryption keys, preventing tampered systems from accessing data. Together, these protections ensure that confidentiality extends beyond live workloads into all stages of data storage and recovery. In environments where compliance requires strict data protection, disk encryption and VTPM become indispensable, turning compute workloads into trustworthy components of a secure cloud architecture. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Compliance assessment tools provide a systematic way to evaluate whether compute workloads conform to established baselines. These tools scan configurations and compare them against predefined standards, such as CIS benchmarks or custom organizational policies. By automating the process, they reduce the reliance on manual audits, which can be error-prone and incomplete. Beyond detection, many of these tools also offer remediation guidance, suggesting or even applying corrective actions to bring systems back into compliance. For example, if a workload is found with an insecure SSH setting, the tool may recommend the exact configuration change needed. Such automation not only strengthens security, but also provides evidence for regulatory and audit purposes. Without assessment tools, organizations may not realize when workloads drift from their intended baselines, leaving silent vulnerabilities unaddressed. With them, compliance becomes a living practice, continuously monitored and adjusted as environments evolve. Vulnerability scanning complements compliance assessment by identifying specific flaws in software and operating systems. These scans detect known common vulnerabilities and exposures, or CVEs, that could be exploited by attackers. Integrating scanning into both image pipelines and runtime environments ensures that vulnerabilities are caught early and continuously. For example, a vulnerable library detected in an image pipeline can be patched before the image is released, while runtime scans monitor live workloads for newly disclosed issues. Prioritization is key, as not all vulnerabilities are equally severe. Linking vulnerability data with risk context helps organizations focus on the most pressing threats. Automation streamlines this process, triggering patch pipelines or alerts when vulnerabilities are found. Without proactive scanning, workloads can harbor known flaws for months, exposing the organization to avoidable risks. Integrated scanning transforms vulnerability management from a reactive firefight into a controlled, predictable process. The Software Bill of Materials, or SBOM, has emerged as a powerful tool for visibility in workload security. An SBOM is essentially an inventory of all software components within an image, including libraries, dependencies, and their versions. This transparency allows organizations to track exposure when vulnerabilities are disclosed, ensuring they know which workloads are affected. It also helps manage license obligations, preventing the accidental use of unapproved open-source components. In cloud environments, where images may be shared or built collaboratively, SBOMs provide a critical record of provenance and accountability. For example, when a high-profile vulnerability such as Log4j emerges, an SBOM enables rapid identification of which workloads include the affected component. By embedding SBOM generation into pipelines, organizations make visibility a default practice rather than an afterthought. This transforms component management from guesswork into evidence-based assurance, strengthening both operational resilience and compliance. Kernel and driver updates address some of the most critical risks in compute workloads. Because kernels operate at the core of the operating system, vulnerabilities here can allow privilege escalation or full system compromise. Drivers, which mediate hardware interactions, can also be abused to bypass controls or inject malicious activity. Updating these components requires careful strategy, as changes at this level can affect system stability. Staged rollouts, such as applying updates first to non-critical systems or using canary deployments, allow organizations to test impacts before broad release. Automation ensures consistency, but human oversight ensures that functionality remains intact. Ignoring kernel and driver updates is particularly dangerous because attackers actively target them to gain maximum control. By managing updates deliberately and carefully, organizations close critical escalation paths while maintaining confidence that workloads remain both secure and stable. Rollback procedures provide a safety net for patching operations, ensuring that organizations can recover quickly if updates introduce issues. Techniques such as blue-green deployments or canary patterns allow patches to be tested on a subset of systems before being rolled out widely. If a patch proves faulty, workloads can switch back to the previous version with minimal disruption. For example, in a blue-green deployment, one environment is updated while another remains unchanged. Traffic can be redirected back if problems arise. These strategies reduce the fear of patching, encouraging timely updates without the risk of prolonged outages. Rollback procedures also support auditability, as they document how failures are managed and resolved. Without such mechanisms, organizations may delay patching out of caution, leaving vulnerabilities exposed. By embedding rollback into patch management, they balance agility and assurance, strengthening both security and availability. Configuration drift detection is essential in dynamic environments where workloads are constantly created, modified, and retired. Drift occurs when systems deviate from their intended baselines, whether through unauthorized changes, misconfigurations, or manual interventions. Detection tools continuously monitor workloads, comparing live states against approved configurations. When deviations are found, automated reconciliation can restore compliance, or alerts can trigger manual investigation. For example, if a firewall rule is opened without approval, drift detection identifies the change and reverts it. This not only reduces security risks, but also provides evidence of control effectiveness. In large environments, drift is inevitable. The question is whether it is detected and corrected in time. By embedding drift detection, organizations prevent small inconsistencies from snowballing into systemic weaknesses, maintaining both security and operational predictability across compute workloads. Immutable infrastructure represents a paradigm shift in managing compute workloads. Instead of patching live systems manually, organizations redeploy updated golden images whenever changes are needed. This reduces variance, as every workload is built from the same trusted source rather than evolving independently. Immutable practices simplify patching, drift management, and rollback, as systems are disposable and replaceable. For example, when a new patch is released, administrators build a new image, validate it, and redeploy workloads rather than updating them in place. This approach aligns with cloud's elastic nature, where workloads can be scaled up and down easily. Immutable infrastructure reduces the risk of lingering vulnerabilities, undocumented changes, or configuration drift. While it requires mature automation, the payoff is a streamlined, reliable, and secure operational model. It represents the logical extension of golden image governance, turning consistency into a default property of compute workloads. Secrets rotation policies reinforce runtime security by ensuring that credentials do not remain static indefinitely. Static credentials, such as API keys or service passwords, become liabilities over time, especially if leaked. Rotation policies schedule regular renewal of these secrets, replacing them with fresh versions before compromise becomes likely. Events such as suspected breaches or employee departures can trigger immediate rotation. For example, database credentials might be rotated every 30 days, with applications automatically updated to use the new values. Centralized secret management systems support this process, ensuring coordination and minimizing disruption. Rotation reduces the window of opportunity for attackers, even if they obtain credentials. It also demonstrates compliance with standards that require periodic credential renewal. Without rotation, secrets become stale vulnerabilities. With it, they remain dynamic safeguards aligned with modern zero-trust principles. Administrative path isolation provides governance over privileged access by confining it to controlled workflows. Rather than granting broad standing privileges, organizations route administration through bastion hosts, enforce just-in-time elevation, and record sessions for accountability. For example, when an engineer needs to troubleshoot a workload, they request temporary access through a bastion, complete their task, and have their actions logged. This reduces the risk of abuse while maintaining operational agility. Session recording deters misuse and supports forensic review if incidents occur. Isolating the administrative path also reduces the attack surface, as it narrows the entry points through which high-privilege access can occur. Without this discipline, administrators may accumulate unchecked power, and attackers who compromise their accounts may move unhindered. Administrative path isolation enforces oversight and transparency, ensuring that privilege is both controlled and auditable in compute environments. Least privilege service identities extend the principle of least privilege from people to processes. Services often require specific capabilities or file system access, but granting them broad permissions creates unnecessary risk. By restricting identities to only what is required, organizations limit the potential damage if a process is compromised. For example, a web server service identity may be restricted from writing to system directories, preventing escalation. Implementing this principle requires granular control and testing, but it strengthens defense in depth by reducing the blast radius of attacks. In cloud environments where microservices multiply, least privileged service identities ensure that compromise of one component does not endanger the entire system. This approach aligns with zero-trust principles, recognizing that no process should be trusted by default, and all should be constrained to their narrowest functional needs. Telemetry collection broadens visibility into compute workloads, capturing not only resource metrics, but also application logs and security events. Metrics such as CPU utilization, memory consumption, and disk I/O inform capacity planning, while logs of application behavior support troubleshooting and forensic investigation. Security events, including failed authentication attempts or suspicious process activity, provide the signals needed to detect threats. Collecting telemetry centrally allows for correlation across workloads, revealing patterns that may not be apparent in isolation. For example, a distributed denial of service attempt may only become visible when traffic patterns are aggregated. Telemetry is not just for security, but also for operations, ensuring that workloads meet performance goals while remaining resilient under stress. Without telemetry, organizations are blind. With it, they gain the insight to detect, respond, and optimize continuously. Performance and capacity testing ensure that hardened images and applied patches do not compromise service-level objectives. Security controls can sometimes introduce overhead, and patches may alter system behavior. By validating performance under load, organizations confirm that workloads still meet business requirements. For example, testing might reveal that a new encryption setting increases CPU consumption, prompting adjustments in resource allocation. Capacity testing identifies bottlenecks before they affect customers, allowing scaling strategies to be adjusted proactively. These tests provide assurance that security and performance coexist rather than compete. They also support informed decision-making, where trade-offs are understood and documented. Without validation, changes may inadvertently degrade services, creating reliability issues that overshadow security gains. Performance and capacity testing thus integrate operational realities into security governance, ensuring that workloads remain both safe and effective. Configuration and image backups serve as a final safeguard, preserving known good states for rapid recovery and audit evidence. Backups of images ensure that hardened baselines remain available even if source repositories are compromised. Configuration backups provide a snapshot of workload settings, enabling restoration after accidental or malicious changes. Together, they provide assurance that recovery is possible not only for data, but also for the environments in which workloads run. For example, a misapplied patch that destabilizes services can be rolled back quickly using preserved images. Backups also provide historical evidence for audits, showing what configurations were in place at specific times. Without backups, recovery depends on rebuilding from scratch, introducing delays and uncertainty. With them, organizations gain both resilience and confidence, turning disruption into a temporary setback rather than a prolonged crisis. Deprovisioning procedures ensure that when instances are retired, they leave no residual risks behind. Proper deprovisioning includes sanitizing disks, revoking credentials, and applying crypto arrays to associated volumes and snapshots. These steps prevent sensitive data from lingering in abandoned resources, where it could later be accessed by unauthorized parties. For example, a forgotten instance snapshot containing customer data could become a compliance violation if left unmanaged. Automating deprovisioning ensures consistency, reducing reliance on manual steps. Documentation of these processes provides audit evidence that workloads are managed responsibly throughout their lifecycle. Deprovisioning is the mirror image of provisioning. Just as secure baselines govern how instances are created, secure retirement governs how they are dismantled. Together, they ensure that security spans the entire lifecycle, from inception to disposal, without gaps. For exam purposes, the relevance of this topic centers on recognizing which frameworks guide baselines, how patch strategies are organized, and how image governance supports security and compliance. Candidates should be prepared to evaluate scenarios involving drift detection, immutable infrastructure, or secret management, understanding not only the technical details, but also the governance principles behind them. The ability to distinguish between reactive and proactive approaches, such as ad hoc patching versus automated pipelines, demonstrates readiness. Questions may also test awareness of rollback strategies, deprovisioning procedures, or telemetry practices as part of workload hardening. Ultimately, the exam emphasizes that compute workloads are not secured by individual controls alone but by the disciplined integration of baselines, patching, and golden images into a cohesive, auditable process. In conclusion, standardized baselines, timely patching, and governed golden images work together to transform compute workloads into hardened, recoverable, and auditable platforms. Baselines define what secure means, patches defend that state against evolving threats, and golden images deliver repeatability across deployments. When combined with practices such as drift detection, secrets management, and deprovisioning, they ensure that security is maintained throughout the workload lifecycle. These measures not only protect against compromise, but also provide resilience, enabling rapid recovery when issues arise. For professionals, the lesson is clear. Security in compute workloads is not a single action but a continuous discipline rooted in consistency, automation, and lifecycle management. By embracing these practices, organizations create cloud environments that are both flexible and trustworthy, capable of meeting today's demands while preparing for tomorrow's challenges. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.